Now we will proceed to the next panel, called Human-Robot Collaboration, the Future of Work. This conversation will be moderated by Dr. Diana Gelhaus, Director for Economy at the Special Competitive Studies Project. Please welcome our panelists. Michael Britt-Crane, Education and Workforce Development Strategist at the Office of Advanced Manufacturing at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Kimberly Cosby, Strategic Policy Advisor for the AFL-CIO Technology Institute, and Jordan Sun, Head of Product Design and Engineering at SoftBank Robotics America.
How is everyone? Woo! Oh yes, after lunch, appreciate it. Just a quick correction from what was on the screen. Kim Cosby from the AFL-CIO Technology Institute is with us, and Liz will be on a panel later on this afternoon. So we are here to talk about everyone's favorite topic. It's come on every panel so far. Some hot takes on the last panel, especially on what this means for work. What is all of this innovation that's on the horizon going to mean for human-robot collaboration? How are we going to make sure our workforce is set for success? And there's another piece to it that I'm also excited to bring into this conversation about the advanced manufacturing workforce. And we heard some of that this morning as well, some of that conversation. I think we should just jump right in. I think this is going to be an awesome discussion. So AI is not new. Robotics, as we've heard throughout the day, is not new. But the convergence of AI and robotics is pretty new, it's pretty exciting, and it's on the frontier right now. And we've heard this morning about all of the sectors that this is already starting to touch: space, agriculture, healthcare, and we could go on. I'd love to get, let's go down the line, each of your perspectives. Where are we on human-robot collaboration? Where do you think this conversation is headed? Let's start with you, Jordan.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most interesting times to be discussing robotics and the workforce. In this country, we've identified an unprecedented wealth gap of 71x between the wealthiest families and the middle-income families. We have a job shortage. You mentioned ag. We've got 2.5 million jobs unfulfilled in the ag sector. And then, when you look at where robots are, the speed to MVP is pretty insane these days, where I'm talking to companies that are pre-seed and they already have an MVP solution sold into market with at least one pilot customer. So there's a lot of very interesting things happening. But I do want to speak on the customer side of it, which is customers now, at least in my space in facility management and what we do in commercial real estate, is they're not saying, what's a robot or do I need a robot? It's more so which robot. And I think that's really interesting because they're coming in with a perspective on the pain points. They have an understanding of what solutions are out there. They have a financial model with CapEx, OpEx concerns of how they're going to approach adoption. And then they have a team on standby or soon at least identified on site as to which ones will receive the training and operating and maintenance. So it's a very different landscape that we're in. And I would say one last thing on the workforce side, which is you're starting to see JDs now in my space where they specify the use of robots or automation for workers on site, which is a totally new thing. And so I'm really encouraged by that.
So I think it's clear that this new convergence really, as you alluded to, expands the addressable market for robotics. Coming at this from a manufacturing perspective, and that it really expands, it creates an opportunity, I think, in the US for us to retake a lot of high-value manufacturing in that global competitive market and build that industry back up with higher productivity, really high-value systems, and that brings with it really high-value jobs and also drives up the skills needs for those jobs. We're starting to see what these new jobs look like, but we have a lot of work to do to scale up our education and training systems to prepare that next generation skilled technical workforce for integration and implementation of these new advanced systems that are so much more accessible, that they're applicable across much more of manufacturing and industrial sectors, but also retail and lots of other sectors as well. So we've got a lot of work to do to build up that system. I see the available talent as a potential rate limiter in our growth of this industry and harnessing of this tech for our economy and our national security. Just in manufacturing, we've got over 250,000 jobs a year going unfilled due to a lack of talent. So we need hundreds of thousands of people qualified to install, integrate, maintain these systems, skilled technical workforce per year. And that's just not where we are right now.
Okay.
Well, Diana, like you already mentioned, this is not something new, but it is something that we're experiencing in a completely different way and seeing how robotics are expanding in the workforce. And from the worker perspective, we often focus on making sure that we have safeguards that are protecting workers and making sure that we're monitoring, data privacy, protecting rights, and preserving good jobs. And when we look at how advances in automation and robotics are often looked at, we hear about how they're creating and making things simpler. And while we do want to see that, we want to make sure that we're not limiting or reducing the worker skill sets. We want to make sure that we're continuing to help them develop and grow and advance in their professions, and that we're providing opportunities for training where they're being able to grow in their professions and being able to see the benefits, not limiting their growth potential and being able to continue to develop. So we want to make sure that we include workers when they're designing and developing and implementing these new technologies, and making sure that we're building on the skill sets that they already possess.
And building on that, just one more scene setter here. SoftBank Robotics has 20,000 robots across 70 countries. Can you talk a little bit about the investment thesis?
Yeah, I mean, I very much spend most of my time operating, but I would say our SoftBank Robotics journey has been in 3 phases. And for those who don't know, the name SoftBank means literally software bank. And part of that was, in the 80s when Masa started the company, he wanted us to be a trading company or have the infrastructure for software landing in Japan and broader Asia. And so phase 1 of this journey was, a series of acquisitions, but also learning how to build an OEM business in the robotics space and then be able to scale that. So we started out in humanoid. We pivoted out of that into single-purpose robots, specifically in floor cleaning. And then we doubled down in that, and that led to then phase 2. As we scaled and understood how to build a profitable margin, what we then started to do now in phase 2 is really look at robot integration as a robot integrator and distributor. So we're reaching across the Vision Fund and our other corp dev activities to be able to help commercialize those robots and create a multi-OEM, multi-product portfolio solution for our enterprise customers. And then phase 3, I'll stop real quick, which is, we bought a cleaning company in Australia. And so there's a lot of very interesting things happening. I'm really excited, but I would say we're quite a unique operating model. We're really by, with, and through for our customers.
Was that a preview?
No, that's public news. But
okay. All right. Well, exciting potential applications coming. Yeah. To pull on the thread that you started, Michael, you've worked a lot in federally funded education and workforce development, specifically for the advanced manufacturing workforce. Thinking about all of the initiatives, can you talk through a little bit about what you've worked on at DoD and now as you're helping implement CHIPS at NIST? Can you talk a little bit about the Center of Excellence that was recently stood up?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, I've been working with the Manufacturing USA Institutes since 2017, previously at DoD, now at NIST, and now also working with the CHIPS for America office and the whole broader CHIPS program. So just to start with sort of where we are and then get to where we're going, the institutes have been at this work for over a decade, and they've really figured a lot of things out, done a lot of pioneering and prototyping of innovative education and workforce development solutions and scalable solutions. Some of those have started to scale up. And, and I'll mention it's not just the institutes, there's a lot of other programs across agencies, NSF, HEE, I'll mention the Tech Hubs program at EDA. So there's a whole catalog of really effective workforce development and training solutions with a lot of cutting edge practices and technology in them. And that tees us up for the next phase, which all of the pieces are in place to scale up. With the investments of chips and of course a focus on the semiconductor manufacturing and the workforce needed to develop new technologies there and implement them here in the US. We're standing up these new public-private partnerships, but we know how to do it. We've been doing it for years with the institutes. So the National Semiconductor Technology Center is central to the CHIPS research and development activity. It's an $11 billion program for that whole portfolio. And the Workforce Center of Excellence that's the nexus, that's the epicenter of all the workforce components of the CHIPS program, both incentives and research and development, and all it's $50 billion. So the workforce COE, they're just getting started. They've recently announced $11 million in, so I think it was $10 million, in funding for workforce programs. But that's just the very start. They're gonna have hundreds of millions of dollars to invest in workforce, and that's just the federal dollars. They're also performing a coordination function of all of the CHIPS EWD activities, including the industry investments on the incentive side, and also engaging and interfacing with the other federal agencies like NSF, recently signed an MOU there on workforce development, and with the 17 existing Manufacturing USA institutes, and there are 2 more institutes in competition right now, one in AI and one in digital twins for semiconductor manufacturing. So the next phase is all about scale. We've got a lot of great solutions, and now we've got the level of investment we need to scale those up, and I couldn't be more excited to see how that's going to play out to really move the needle on the workforce problem.
I agree, it's incredibly exciting, and I think a lot of people are watching, and there's a lot of momentum. If I may just ask one follow-up question.
Sure.
You've been thinking about these issues and working in these issues for so long, and as you are thinking about scale, now that you've got resourcing and momentum, what do you see as best practices in terms of what works? Because we have been hearing about the challenges in the advanced manufacturing and technical workforce for such a long time.
Yeah, so the thing about workforce is that it's really a suite of problems. So there's a lot of very dissimilar best practices. So you have cutting edge technology in the form of blended learning, content delivery, that really is a much more effective way to learn and gives the learner a self-paced approach and creates leverage for the expensive and scarce hands-on time with equipment and instructors. So that's sort of on the tech side. But really I want to focus on implementation, because the reality is every workforce problem, most workforce problems, especially for the skilled technical workforce, are localized. So that means you really have to have a comprehensive localized implementation that goes beyond a specific workforce need and convenes stakeholders within a regional economy or a sector to understand what the assets are, what the needs are, and align the programs of study and credentials to meet the industry need. So it's really a constellation of different things, from the fairly somewhat well understood playbook for regional economic development intervention, and workforce is a central component of that, especially for manufacturing, to the cutting edge tech to really change the way education and training is executed.
Well, I'll be following along. Very exciting. So the other side of that coin is the worker and the workforce. And Kim, I think, the AFL-CIO represents a critical voice in this conversation as we are thinking about rapid and potentially profound technological change. I'm wondering from where you sit and thinking about how we're already starting to see conversations emerge, like the recent strikes from the Writers Guild out in LA to the port strike more recently. It's really important that this voice is represented. I'm wondering, where do you see that conversation right now in terms of how the worker's perspective is being integrated into things like AI+Robotics?
So it's something really interesting to mention about how workers are perceiving technology, artificial intelligence, because there are an array of perspectives when it comes to this. But the biggest thing that we've seen is that workers want to be able to have a say and have a voice in the design, the development, and the deployment of these different systems. I think there's a misconception that unions are anti-technology and anti-progress, and that's just not true. We want to have a seat at the table. We want to have an opportunity to provide input, and we greatly believe that technology has the potential of creating prosperity and improving people's lives. However, it has to be implemented responsibly. We want to make sure that we are not violating anyone's civil rights. We want to make sure that we're not increasing economic inequality. We want to provide opportunities for people to continue to develop, as I mentioned before. So when we see things like artificial intelligence being used to screen job candidates or to increase worker surveillance or to the algorithms that lead to repetitive motion injuries, that's a concern for us because that can lead to worker burnout, that can lead to the loss of jobs and a lot of worker turnover. We want to make sure that these things are being done in a meaningful and in a manageable way. It doesn't have to be a point of contention. It's an opportunity for us to communicate with one another and really see opportunities to grow and develop together. And so when we see new systems being implemented or new technology being developed, we want to make sure that we remember the human aspect of that work because people are using it every day. We've seen benefits of collaboration. We partner with Carnegie Mellon University, and they had the opportunity to collaborate with transportation workers and have input on automated transit. And they were amazed at the input that they received from the workers because there were things that they had never considered. But the people who are the end users who interact with this technology on a daily basis knows what happens, and we want to make sure that we're doing things that are feasible and effective. We recently signed an MOU with the National Science Foundation, and we're really excited about the opportunity to have workers be able to provide their input in the work that's being done with the National Science Foundation because it's exciting to see that they are beginning to recognize the importance of having those voices, not just some, but all voices in the room to be able to make sure that technology is continue to improve. And I'm just really excited about all of the opportunities that are coming before us right now.
Yes, and as I say. The Technology Institute is a really exciting platform to be able to help advance some of these issues and conversations. I saw the NSF MOU, also a really big deal. Can you talk a little bit about what the Technology Institute is up to and what you see the AFL-CIO's role in advancing this conversation?
So it's a couple of different ways. We often look at different policies as they're being presented, and we also advocate, I would say the majority of the time, for making sure that, like I said, workers have a seat at the table, that they're actually having the opportunity to provide input. We also see the role and the importance of making sure that workers are receiving meaningful training, and that can be problematic at times just because sometimes we see training that's being developed and treating workers as a blank slate, and that's just not who they are. They're workers who have a set of skills and knowledge and experiences, and we want to be able to build upon the skills and the knowledge that they already have and make sure that work is becoming meaningful and that they have the opportunity to continue to grow and develop in their careers. So that would be the biggest role. We've seen the experiences, and labor unions have a history of being able to develop training programs and apprenticeship programs where workers are able to enter the field with a great deal of skill and knowledge. And I think if we continue to collaborate with designers, with developers, with companies who are creating this technology and have those lines of communication open. It provides the opportunity to make sure that that training continues to grow and be precise on what is needed right now, but also leads to the training that will be needed for future roles that we don't even know is necessary yet.
Awesome. Jordan, from where you're sitting, can you tell us about how you see the long-standing workforce challenges that we've raised already, what you think needs to be done to tackle some of these challenges, and what you see as the role of industry versus academia versus government?
Yeah, this is, I would say the prevailing theme here is that, and we're seeing this with the elections, which is, are we able to speak to the everyday American? And in other words, are we able to truly understand people's needs and concerns and make sure that we're not leaving folks behind when this revolution happens or as it's happening? And so I think local government and federal government have a lot to play in this. I would say the first, though, is that we need to be able to enable the companies to be able to have a certain level of margin where they can also invest in broader programs versus being hyper-focused on barely getting by. Right? And so when I think about what governments have done well, I spend a good amount of time now in Chicago at the University of Chicago Institute of Politics as a Pritzker Fellow, and got to tour around some of the hubs, and one of the organizations called M-Hub, which partners with P33, and they're doing really interesting things where the local government there, the city of Chicago, is accelerating permitting processes, and there's all sorts of other ways, from land grants to just basically getting out of the way of business to be able to go quickly on things that otherwise shouldn't require that much time, right? So founders can focus on building those companies, getting to product market fit, and scaling. Because I think only then can you actually really have also the C-suite focus on better investing in these negative externalities that could be created either directly with the workforce or the workforce that is potentially being augmented or displaced. And so I think that's the first thing that needs to happen. I think the second thing, though, is also that we don't really talk about is trade at the federal level, which is, we have these great American robotics companies. How are we exporting them? Who's vouching for these companies? Who's promoting these companies? And I think that's something we should also consider. And I think there's so many ways that we can just do better in terms of enabling our ecosystem so that we can think about also the other side of the picture, which is, I can talk more about upskilling, but let me pause there first.
No, please.
So I think the other part of this is where I really like to get to is, we have a portfolio company in the Vision Fund called Nero. They did something really interesting with public-private partnerships, working with community college to build credentialing programs. And so I think this panel's conversations around workforce development, it is making sure that we legitimize the new skills that the workforce receives through credentialing, so they have something to point to be like, this is how I'm elevated, this is why I deserve more money, and here's how it's being backed by an institution. I think we owe that to people who are taking on additional work in their daily duties, working with robots now rather than doing the manual work themselves. And so we need to be able to have credentialing programs. I think first and foremost is probably the quickest way for us to be able to figure out how to elevate and provide higher job growth.
Short plug for our vision for competitiveness at the Special Competitive Studies Project, published a few months ago, where we echo that recommendation, because I think we have some outdated occupational taxonomies, and getting back to, Michael, your point about how to revitalize the education and training ecosystem for sectors like advanced manufacturing, rethinking their credentialing model, but they have to mean something, and employers have to understand what that means, and there has to be a consistent taxonomy around that. So I think that's actually critical. It's wonky, but it's really, really critical, so I appreciate that point. But thinking about some of these conversations, right, we've had this thread of the advanced manufacturing workforce, getting people excited and qualified for careers in advanced manufacturing. At the same time, you've got this broader uncertainty or apprehension about what AI plus robotics could mean for the future of work, and what human-robot collaboration could look like. I'm curious, let's just go back down the line. I think policymakers are also thinking a lot about these questions. What is one thing that you wish that policymakers knew and were tackling to make sure that the U.S. leads in AI plus robotics innovation, and how can we prepare the workforce both on the advanced manufacturing side, that technical piece, and the whole workforce for human-robot collaboration? We'll start with you, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as current workforces and future workforce, right? So current workforce, I won't belabor you, credentialing. We need something for workers to work with and point to say, I can negotiate more because they have a higher BATNA there. On the future workforce side, really it comes down to talent, you know, and immigration and you know, talent is our greatest greatest strategic import in this country, and the fruits of those talent is our greatest strategic export. And so I've mentioned it before in the Ash Card Exchange a few years ago, and I'll mention it again here. We need more talent, and we need to be the best-in-class talent in order to build the best-in-class robot companies.
So I agree. I think credentialing is a big part of the solution. There's a lot of pieces there, and actually credentialing is kind of at the crux, or skills validation more broadly. There are other ways to do it. And that's fundamentally a social problem. You need to have you know, employers recognize that credential and what it means in terms of what students can do. So to answer your question, the one thing that I would you know, push on here is that workforce development is a very hard problem. I have conviction that this will be the rate limiting problem for us to build AI-based industries here in the US. We have workforce shortages in, you know, for the skilled technical workforce in industrial sectors now, and the skills demands are going up with these new technologies and changing. And to all the folks working on tech and policy, if you consider workforce as a part of the holistic problem that we're tackling here, anywhere where you can solve a workforce problem in the tech and policy domain, that's going to shrink the big social problem that we're taking on in the workforce domain and allow us to move faster to build these industries here in the US for our global competitiveness.
Well, it won't come as a surprise to anyone here that I would want policymakers to recognize the value that current workers already have when it comes to looking at the training opportunities and workforce development opportunities that are present right now and that are coming in the future, and making sure that they're allowing workers to be meaningful partners both now and in the future when it comes to designing present day programs, as well as helping to prepare the future workforce for this work.
And I guess because we have 1 minute left, one more quick down the line, how far out do you see human-robot collaboration from being a reality in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, it's happening already. So, you know, places like this, when the staff puts away the tables, you know, they most likely might be rolling in robots and cleaning the floors. So it's happening already.
Yeah, it's a transition, right? And you know, humans working with robots are always going to be more powerful than either of them working together when you look at the big systems that we're working on, and it's just a question of how that shifts, and to your point, how these automation systems are built so that they empower our frontline workers rather than replacing them, augment and empower with, you know, things like just-in-time training and you know, digital systems that are intuitive, no code, so they can develop them themselves. But I'll pass it along.
Well, you've already taken some of my points.
Sorry.
But it is something that already exists and is happening, so we just want to make sure that we continue to ensure that it is implemented safely and that we're not harming workers in the process.
Great. Please join me in thanking our great panelists. Thank you so much.